Hello. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Let's give a big shout out to Hall of Flowers for hosting us here today, the best show in cannabis. Woo! I am super excited to be hosting this panel today called I Love New York. Today, we're going to be speaking to two absolute legends in the cannabis space who are making some major waves in New York City and around New York. We have Anna Willey from Cam Dispensaries, and we have Vlad Bautista from Happy Monkey. Let's introduce them and welcome onto the stage. I'm going to do a quick intro, pull out my handy dandy notebook over here, talk a little bit about Anna and Vlad before we hop into some burning questions. Anna is the founder of Cam Dispensaries, one of the most respected cultivators in the game. She's been in the industry since high school, where she was delivering weed from a young age. Ever since she's been built a cannabis empire with 21 licenses in California. She has a major licensing deal in New York, bringing her genetics and her operating procedures to a multi-state level. With licensing deals, finding the right partners can make or break you. So we're going to get into some questions and just grill her on just the ins and outs of doing it right, learning from all the learnings that she's had in her experience so far, and just talk about the trial tribulations and what she's learned along the way. So let's give it up for Anna Willey. I am pronouncing that right, yeah? Wiley?
Yep, that's
Okay,
Wiley.
great.
Yes, like the coyote. Yep.
And next we have Vlad Bautista. Vladimir or Vlad? Both. Whatever works, beautiful. Co-founder and CEO of Happy Monkey, a true legend in New York. Vlad has had a long experience in cannabis. He's been arrested like 22 times, served time for cannabis, and turned those struggles into a thriving legal empire. Happy Monkey now holds retail licenses in New York City with plans for multiple dispensaries, a consumption lounge. Vlad knows firsthand what it takes to transition from the legacy market to the legal industry. And he's here today to share what that journey has really looked like. So let's give it up for Vlad Bautista.
I'm honored to be here, Ben, with you, person I respect. Anna, Hall of Flowers is my first time here at any cannabis conference in California, so great place, great company to be in.
Bless. Cool. Well, you know, there's a lot of talk about community in cannabis. I think Hall of Flowers is a great example of it. Just a lot of happy people, people that are excited to support one another in cannabis and beyond. And so I wanted to just talk a little bit about what community, what culture means in New York. Community has kind of become this token word that brands like to use. But if Vlad and Anna are anything, they are beyond talkers. They walk the walk. And so I just wanted to know kind of what you guys feel about building community, how it works. Is community even real? And how do you make that feeling for customers to go beyond just an audience and actually feel like they're part of something? Let's start with you, Anna, because ladies first.
I think it's a big part of it is just showing up and being consistent. I think it's as a brand working with your retail partners. It's not just about dropping off product and then coming back saying, "Hey, do you want another order?" Or, it's really making sure that you have a full service brand, that you are supporting the products, you have brand ambassadors, there's marketing, there's digital assets. There's so much you can do to resonate with your customers. And then I think the big difference in New York is that you really can't fake it. You have to have a sense of authenticity. So I think these days you'll see a lot of brands maybe trying to go in and out, but the customer is going to decide on who's going to stay in the New York market. And it's usually because of authenticity. So I think culture is authenticity and showing up every day for your retail partner as a brand, and consistent product. I think that's a really big piece of it too. I think a lot of times people think that the strains that are working in California are automatically going to work in New York, and I don't think that's the case. I think that they're going to create their own brand of strains and things that they like, and it's been there for a long time in the underground market. So people are a educated consumer.
Vlad, what do you think?
Well, I think that it's the it's the only thing that's gonna stand the test of time when it comes to the longevity of this industry is people that understand community on a deeper level, because I think we're a prime example of like how our company's been trademarked for 7 years, but we only really started selling cannabis about 6 months ago. And I think what kept us going and made us so big and be known all over the country and all over the world was community. And I think that it's easy to get lost in the SOPs, in the data, and lose and understand that the common denominator is humanity and human beings and how you make them feel and how you impact them. So that's why me and my team, we saw that as the only thing that's going to last the test of time. As you know, this unfortunately this plant is going to get commoditized, and the only thing that's going to not get commoditized is people that have community, people that have the following of the community, because if not, what happens is like, why would I go when I have 1,000 options to you, Ben, instead of Johnny or Jenny or whoever it is? And that's the only thing that's going to separate it. And I believe that you have to really do things like events. You have to really do community engagement things to really tap into the community on a constant basis, because as Anna said, in a place like New York, the second that you're just trying to like, you know, just copy and paste that or just like sugarcoat that in any way, the people will tell, the culture will tell, and your brand will get diluted really fast. So I think that that is the only thing that's going to help brands, whether you're on the retail side or you're on the product side, to really stand the test of time, because this is something that's been around for 80 years, right? When it comes to like the market and, you know, for sale and consumption. And I think that it's easy for people from the legacy and people that are insiders to get lost and like that we see it like that. But the consumer has been part of the legacy market for the last 80 years also, and they're programmed and conditioned to be loyal to this culture that has been harboring for all these years. So they can smell when somebody's not of it quickly, and they will immediately bring their dollar somewhere else once they feel that.
Yeah, I think you did it right, Vlad. I mean, just being from New York and, you know, being part of just the New York cannabis scene and seeing Happy Monkey like from the very beginning, whether the plan was to go from legacy to legal or not, just by happenstance, the way the universe works, the way you work, you know, it didn't start as a money grab. It started as a safe haven. You know, community starts where there's a need, and you know, years ago the need was a place to smoke, a place to relax, a place to meet like-minded people, a place to feel safe. And Happy Monkey was that place for so many people. And I think the fact that it started that way, even though you may have been selling weed as well, you know, you got to keep the lights open. It wasn't always about, and maybe, you know, it wasn't always about the money. It wasn't always about making investors happy. It was just about filling a gap. And I think that's where community starts, is just doing things because it feels right. And once it builds traction, you know, people have bills to pay. You know, you got kids, we got rent. It's not cheap to live in New York. And so, you know, you got to figure out a way to monetize it. But when it comes from a place deeper than the dollars, people see that, people feel that. You know, I'm sure you saved people who would have been smoking in the streets, and maybe could have gotten in trouble with the law, and instead have a place to smoke. You know, that leaves a deeper impression on them than just buying weed at the store and going home and smoking it.
What I like to say to add to that, Ben, is that cannabis is like this scalpel that in this divided world where nobody agrees on anything and people are so divided and people are so politicized, that cuts through all those divisions. And in scenarios like you said, or when we had that lounge or any scenario, the common denominator for all human beings is that everybody has issues, everybody has problems, but we all need this joint to forget about them right now. And I think cannabis is one of the few things left in the world that can bring any walk of life, religion, race, or any type of people together in peace, love, and harmony. And we just were able to use that at the right time to bring New York together and bring all the meeting of the minds to get us to where we are now.
Yeah. And I'd love to see more of that. You know, like I think that you know, cannabis consumers, we hang our hat on that a lot, you know. Weed is about peace, and it's about love, and it's about we're all the same, and, you know, nothing matters but love. But to be real, you know, I run an Instagram account, and we post all sorts of different types of content, you know. And, you know, whether it's Pride Month and we're posting a rainbow join, or it's Black History Month and we're highlighting, you know, the tribulations of the Black community, we get some hate in the comments, you know. Fuck this woke shit, whatever, you know. And it kind of hurts me to read that, because we're supposed to be this community about, you know, just smoke a joint and just love life. We're all just humans trying to make it, and just, you know, I hope to see more of that, you know. I hope it's not just this thing we say but don't do, because as this industry grows, and as, you know, the Constellation brands and the Procter and Gambles of the world join this industry and try to take all the market share away from these small businesses, you know, years down the line, we're all going to be scrambling to our quote-unquote competitors and saying, like, let's get together so we could fight these big corporations. But now we're all fighting each other because we think we're competition. It's silly. I think we really need to firm up this community and genuinely be about peace and love and understanding, and get this mentality of us versus them, because for us to be a real community, we have to love each other despite our differences. So
I think it's important for the legacy market to really still be alive, because it brings the culture.
Yes.
So for folks that are coming from legacy, like both me and Vlad, we can, you know, there is obviously business practices and running a good business and taking care of your employees, and all of the, you know, the SOPs in the world, like you said, don't bring that together, but just kind of the stories and making sure your narrative is still alive, where you came from, and honoring where you came from, and not being embarrassed by it, or just kind of embracing that, I think is a big piece of keeping the culture and keeping the community.
well said. I love that. Well, to niche it back into New York, because we're talking just general culture and community, you know, every state has their own regulations, their own criteria. Sometimes it's for the good. A lot of times it's not so much. So I want to talk a little bit about New York specifically, and how regulations, how culture has created a challenge for you guys, how in certain instances it was a benefit. I know that there are certain regulations regarding, you know, getting paid on time is, you know, one good thing about the regulations in New York. You know, you don't pay within 30 days and you find yourself on a blacklist. And so let's talk a little bit about the struggles and then the benefits of regulation as it is right now in New York. We know it's going to change 10,000 million times. But for where it is right now, tell us about that experience for anybody that's, you know, trying to open in New York or gain some traction in New York. Anna, what's your thoughts?
Well, I really like that they're coming out with micro licenses, so I think that's a big piece of it. Having smaller canopies is just going to ensure that the state of New York and New York City will get craft cannabis. I think one of the better parts of the regulation is that they have actually done social equity. I'm sure there's, you know, pluses and minuses, but they actually did do it. I think that they've given that piece of it a lot of resources to thrive. And I love it that there's a lot of small craft growers. So the regulations, I mean, it's a glut for sure, and it's difficult for people to scale fast because there's so many regulations, and the cost to do business in New York is pretty daunting. I mean, that's why we were like, okay, I have 4,000 lights here, 2 distros, we're in 450 stores. For us, we just wanted to kind of check it out by doing, you know, getting a partner and doing some licensing. And even then, there's so many regulations of just, we waited 14 months just to get a type, just a name only, right? So, you know, get ready to wait and be patient, and just know that that's why anything really good is hard. So it's going to take some time for that to grow. And then folks that are already operating take advantage because you're first movers. So.
Any insider tips on that? Like, sure, be patient, but follow up every third day. Find a mentor that knows somebody, and like, what are the real down and dirty tricks that move the needles so you didn't have to just sit around and twiddle your thumbs?
I mean, I did a lot of our licensing, and I'm, you're on it every day. You literally have to follow up every single day. You should have some type of legal team. I think in New York, it's important if you haven't written a license or you don't have experience in that, find people in that lane to do it. I think that's a big piece of it. And if you can find a mentor or somebody that you can business partner with that's already there, that's going to be your greatest strength. So,
do you need a partner that's a lawyer? I feel like everyone's scared of legal. It just screams money. It screams they know too much. Am I going to get fucked in this situation? Like, how do you find a lawyer? How do you structure the deals? How do you make sure you're not overspending? How'd you navigate that? Did you learn any hard lessons in that process?
I'm still learning hard lessons. I'm learning them every day. I think that the main thing about contracts are the two people that are signing them. The contract's only as good as the people that are signing the piece of paper. So pick carefully. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. I selected a partner that I thought their product could use some improvement. And I know about cultivation. I figure we could give them some genetics and just try it out. And it's still, like, even after 15, 16 months, we're just kind of, that's the beauty about cannabis. It takes a long time to get going. So, have a plan for if you have brand standards with your partner and the quality doesn't come out the way that you want it to, make sure you're comfortable of that product maybe going into another brand or being sold as bulk. I mean, these are all things you need to think about when you're getting into a partnership with somebody that is cultivating, which is it's pretty been hard for me because we grow everything that we sell here. But it's been a different experience, and not a bad one, just a different one.
Have a plan A, B, and C for every single thing you do along the line.
D, E, and F.
Vlad, what do you think?
When it comes to the way that I view it is a little different because, there's always pros and cons to everything. But ultimately, from my research, and I've had the fortune to really take a bird's eye view of what's happening all over the country and all over the world. New York, by far, has the most equitable program in the world. Why do I say that? Because there is a lot of merit to what Anna said as far as like so many regulations and how it's hard to scale. But then the benefit of that is that in every market that I've seen, the MSOs usually come in first and dominate because they are the first to have the resources and the capital to scale. New York made it where like it's more beneficial for small and medium-sized businesses. So that I think was a good thing because now 2-3 years later, New York has more marginalized people owning dispensaries more than the whole country combined. So that's one benefit to it. The other one is that it wasn't like the rest of the markets where they just threw around that whole social equity word. I don't think that's what has separated New York as much. What separated New York was more justice involved. So people like me that were from the legacy market and others that here on the West Coast were ostracized because of their record had a priority in New York where like people that were arrested as many times as me and were able to have ran a business for 2 years were able to get first dibs with the card program now has made it really balanced and really competitive. And I think that that's how you have better odds of absorbing the legacy market by creating bridges and not moats for them to cross over, because we all know, you saw it here in this state, the legacy market will crush you if you just try to like completely ostracize them. The only chance you stand is by trying to help them get into the legal market. So like that, the high tide raises all the boats, and then the tide gets bigger. And then the other one is that I think New York is doing that I haven't seen in many places. I'm first generation Dominican. I believe that one of the most underserved communities in the country and in the world is the Latin Spanish-speaking community. and there are 4 million Spanish-speaking people in New York. There's about 60 million in the country, and one of the people that suffered the most, which hence the name marijuana, is because of Latin Spanish-speaking people. But when it comes to ownership, we have had one of the least amount of ownerships. But now that is changing. You have groups like us in New York. You have other groups like Con Bud, Latino-owned Polanco Brothers. You have on the branding and processing side, you have people like a good friend of mine, Miguel Brito. They have one off. You have my friend Gabe Encarnacion. They have a processing, Glenna Co. So that would not be possible without New York creating this program that creates these bridges instead of moats, and creates moats for the people that usually go into every state and just dominate the industry. Now they have to really get strategic, get with the culture, get with community, or they're not gonna make it, because it's not as simple as like just throw money at it and you get to just dominate the market. So I think that even though it's had its issues with the rollout, the pros by far outweigh the cons from what I've seen so far.
Something we talked about on our call, our brief call before this, was that in terms of consumption in public, New York, would you say, Vlad, New York is the only place where you can smoke outside in public, anywhere where you could smoke a cigarette?
That's correct. The only place in the world where you can consume cannabis and where you can consume cigarettes is New York. And, that makes it where, like, it's way more accepted in society and way more consumption.
So come on down to New York, where you could smoke freely. Let's talk about competition for a second. We talked about it previously. This is still all brand new. Obviously, a customer walks into a dispensary and, they have a choice to make with the amount of money that they're looking to spend. How fierce is the competition? Is that something that you guys are thinking about from a brand perspective, from a dispensary perspective? Are we at that place where, sometimes I think there's just so many people who want to smoke weed in New York, like there isn't even competition yet. How do you feel? Is it fierce? Are you trying to get that market share so badly because you have investors or you have goals to meet, or is a little bit more lax because it's so brand new and there's so many potential customers out there? I'll start with you, Anna.
I think there's a lot of competition, but right now there's not that many. They're coming online, but there's not that many indoor facilities. So I would say that the competition is more so from the outside of really good product on the streets and a bodega and those areas, and just people that have been getting their weed the same way they've been getting their weed for, 50 years. So I think that's where the competition is. I think there's a lot of California in New York, let's put it that way. I think that's where the stores are going to have, more so in New York City. And I think they've closed most of those down. But then in upstate, you have the pricing hasn't started going down. So I think that's pretty good for us. We're in it for a long term. We're just kind of testing out partners. We'll look at a micro grow at some point. It's just slow and steady. It's better to just make sure you're protecting your brand, putting a little bit of product out in the market, seeing how it does, seeing what the strains do, kind of get the data, and then kind of tweak on it, and again continue to build it, but do it slowly. So we're not in a rush.
And for Vlad, for you, it's a different scenario because you're a dispensary owner. And as I understand, in New York, dispensaries cannot have house brands. So you're not currently producing cannabis. You're just the home for all the other brands. So a little bit of a different game than Anna's. How do you feel in a competitive landscape right now?
I think it's extremely competitive, but the balance is it's the biggest market, highest consuming market in the world, but the opposite of that is that it's the most attractive market in the world. So I'll give you the legal side. The legal side is right now there's like 310 dispensaries in New York. There are over 600 brands in New York, with probably another 300 dispensaries on their way this year, with another 600 brands on their way. So I think it's extremely competitive. And what happens is it's not just on the legacy side, it's not just California. It's New York has always been King Kong consumer and has already had cannabis from all over the country and all over the world coming in from Canada to Oklahoma to Cali to Oregon to everywhere you could think of. So you have a legacy market that's like on steroids. The legal market, the whole country wants to come also. So it's extremely competitive. But like I said, and like we were talking earlier, this is where it comes in how much community you have, how much cultural capital you have, how much you are tapped in, how much people believe in what you're doing, because New York is a place where, like, you know this with everything else. You just mentioned it earlier, but like, people don't Google where they're gonna eat at. If somebody that they don't trust doesn't tell them this is a good restaurant, people are not going. So I think that is going to be similar when it comes to cannabis. Like, it's going to be like somebody you trust has to tell you, go to that store. Somebody you trust has to tell you, go purchase this product, because it's going to become such a big ocean so fast. And, you know, New Yorkers are not going to take the time to really do the due diligence without somebody that they really trust. Like, without that extra belief in the product or the retail company, it's going to get really difficult really fast.
And in the vein of competition, like, you want to stay on top. You want the same customers to keep coming. You want new customers to show up. What's been the most effective strategy to get people to buy your product? You know, everyone has some level of a marketing mix, whether it's organic social media, whether it's paid media, whether that's paid meta ads or programmatic or influencers or bud tender events or consumer events or emails and newsletters. Anna, what's been your saving grace for getting customers? I know in California you just have a diehard fan base. You've been making top tier product, and so the product kind of speaks for itself. And to Vlad's point, word of mouth, it's just like, I've been smoking cam for years. It's fucking amazing. It's consistent. Keep buying it. But in New York, you have a licensing deal. It's a totally different scenario, and we'll get into that in a second.
Totally different scenario. We still were education, right? Getting the staff to try the product, to organically get them to say that they like smoking cam or they would like to recommend it. I think that's really important, one. And then two, brand ambassadors. I think that strategy that's worked really here well for us is to kind of build that team out there and having a partner that's going to let you do that as well, because that's obviously going to be a separate employee base, right? And seeing where they want to spend, and then if they don't want to spend, I think it's up to the brand of wherever they are, which is here for us, is kind of creating that group there. You know, having them out in California, having them go through the grow facilities, having them feel the culture. Because when you're starting off and you only got one or two brand ambassadors, maybe a marketing person out there, it's very small. They're not feeling all that love and support that we have here with, over 100 people. So it's a challenge for sure. But I would say that resonating with the retail, making sure that their staff is happy, working with the retail to make sure there's a deal in place or pricing in place that's going to make sure both parties make money, making sure that the product is fresh on the shelf, and going from there. I think that's...
So to recap, just so it's clear, because I feel like this is an important one, brand to retail relationship, making sure the bud tenders genuinely love you, are educated and informed so they could recommend you honestly to the customer, and somebody running brand ambassadors would be the key ones.
And consistent product. I mean, you don't have anything without consistent product.
For sure.
There's not. Yeah, that's that. I mean, but I mean, for a lot of people, they're not focusing on that. You have to have consistent product, especially in New York, because it's an educated smoker. They've been smoking weed for a long time.
Damn right, we have. Vlad, what do you think? I feel like this is a deep one.
On the retail side, and what we've done is we put a heavy emphasis on education, because even though people are super educated when it comes to, good weed and smoking, a lot of the insider terms that we know, it's a really new market they don't know. So what we've done is we've made big investments on that front. So, for example, in each one of our stores, there's an explore screen which has nothing to do with purchasing. What's on this Explorer screen? What are cannabinoids? What are the medicinal benefits to each cannabinoid? So now this allows consumers to match their products to whatever ailment they're trying to heal or feel. Then there's another section that says terpenes. What terpenes are, what the medicinal benefits are of terpenes. Now consumers could be like, oh, now I know why I like the candy because it has myrcene or it has this, and now they can match their palate to whatever product they like. Then we also break down what is legal in New York, like the fun facts where we said earlier you can smoke in New York. We break down where the taxes go, how New York is done a really good job of making sure that a portion of the taxes go back to the community. It's a 14%, 13% tax, but 9% goes to the state for public education, drug treatment programs, community reinvestment. But a lot of people don't know that 4% then go to the zip code of the town or wherever the dispensary is operating at. So, for example, we opened the first legal cannabis dispensary in Inwood. New York sold $1 billion in cannabis last year. Before we opened, that area didn't get a penny. So now the consumer understands the medicinal benefits, understands their palate, understands how their dollars impact their community. Then we have another section that breaks down good cultural things to do in the area, like nice restaurants, museums, etc. And that also helps the community because studies say for every dollar spent at a dispensary, $4 to $5 gets spent on the vicinity around it. Now we help, the community that way also. Then last but not least, like why me and my partners, our story. And so now they can't look at us the same way they look at the other 300 and something dispensaries because it's like I just didn't get cannabis here. I learned something here. And we believe that that's going to cut deeper than just having great products of cannabis.
I love that. It's almost like if you're the one who teaches somebody everything they know about weed, they're going to end up being customers for life. What about beyond that, though? What about other advertising channels? I feel like I've seen ads on bus stations. Like
You're trying to make me give out all the sauce on here,
not
Ben?
all the sauce,
right.
but these people
All
are
right.
here. They want to know something.
So-
You've tried a lot of things.
Yeah, no.
Give us a little bit of the
So what
sauce.
happens is, like, we are a scrappy company, been in the legacy market, like you said, been in cannabis for 27 years. So now that we're in retail, we're applying all our, everything we've done from flyers to posters to bus stops to link ads to events. We're leaving no stone unturned because we understand, as you do, Ben, that you need at least 7 different points where people see you in 7 different places before you even register in the thousands of advertisements they're going to see every day.
And what's been the most fruitful one so far? Come on.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. Some of the most fruitful ones have been the most old school ones,
Yeah.
like the flyers and the posters and stuff like that, which is surprising. And we've done everything, but there's something about when it's like these real tangible advertisement things.
Don't forget the gorilla.
I think also the events have been great, Revelry, and just giving a place for brands, similar. I think Hall of Flowers might come out.
Yeah, let's.
Yeah, so I think that those types of events of bringing the community together and having a consumer aspect and a place where buyers and bud tenders can come and visit and get a brand history and get a brand story is important.
Hell yeah. I did see something up, so I think it is official that Hall of Flowers is coming to New York in October. So everybody stay tuned for Hall of Flowers in New York. I don't know where we are on time, but I do have one question just to pivot back, Anna. I see a couple of creators in the audience here, and whether you're content creators or artists or people that are in the cannabis scene that aren't necessarily selling weed, they might yearn to get into it. I know for me with WeedFeed, I've had a couple of companies approach us for licensing deals, and I find myself like 90% of the time saying no to most opportunities just because I don't want to just like whore this thing out for a pretty penny. But licensing is something that can't be ignored. And not everybody has the funds or the infrastructure or the legal backing or the financial backing to just start a weed company from scratch, and licensing oftentimes seems like a great path because you don't have to do all of the back end work. You could just come in hot with the things that you're good at and create a deal. And I know that you have a licensing deal in New York with PharmaCann, an MSO. And I know that that can't be easy, and I know that there were learnings, and I don't see it, but I'm sure there's some metaphorical gray hairs that come from that experience. So if you could share some of that with us, so maybe people in this audience could learn a lesson that you learned without having to deal with the pain, I'm sure they would be appreciative.
I think that your contract should list everything that could go wrong. And I think that you need to think about those things. Like I said, what's going to happen to your strains when they don't come to the quality that you want them to be. Understanding where that product's going to go, where your strains are going to go if something occurs. I think having a relationship with their cultivation teams is important. I think that if you don't put in the work, you're not going to get much back. So for us, it's been a learning experience, and it's been a really good one. I mean, I think that the folks, at least the ones that I work with closely at PharmaCann, they do smoke weed. They are providing great jobs. They do have a culture within, and it's been tough because the New York market hates MSOs. And in the beginning, they were just like, we're just not going to carry anything that's from an MSO. So for a little bit, I'm like, okay, I don't want to be your token situation where you kind of bring me in as some like legacy person that's like, but I was really honest with them. I'm like, hey, we're here to bring top shelf cultivation aspects and genetics, and we're trying to grow our brand. And we like the fact that they have a beautiful 40,000 square foot indoor facility, something that we didn't have. It's not that we're doing great here, but just the time and the human capital to go over there. I definitely like to, go to my cultivation facilities, go to the distro, and go home. And New York is a good 7 hours away. So it's been a learning experience, and then also having to start from scratch in a new state every single time is exciting, and it's great for the brand, and it's a good way to bring home some, Christmas bonuses back home for the team.
Love that. So make sure you think of everything that could possibly go right or go wrong and get that in the contract. Make sure enough of the people at the company smoke weed themselves. Was there just one thing that you're like, oh, only I wish I knew this before, that could maybe save some headache to someone in the audience? Like, what was one thing that could have went wrong or went wrong that you should have put in the contract that maybe someone will after this talk?
I think really making sure like where your strains are going to go after they don't do well, what's going to happen to those genetics, if they're in multi-states, that each state should have its own different deal. This is just for the MSO aspect, and then just also understand it's business. They have to make money too. So both the brand and the folks that are growing your product and marketing your product, making sure that you're giving them enough support where they feel that you're not just throwing some genetics their way and saying, "Where's my check?" So creating a better relationship, and that stuff takes time.
I want everyone to just get as much as they can out of this panel. So, Vlad, Anna, are there any other learnings or experiences that you want to throw down and just offer some words of advice to the audience before I open it up for like one or two questions?
Well, what I would say is that I think Anna alluded it to a little bit earlier when she said the contracts are as important as the people involved. In this industry, people can show you whatever they want in their projections, in their data rooms, but if you're not dealing with some people that have morals, principles, and values, I would never just go off of whatever you see on a spreadsheet or whatever, people tell you they want to hear. Make sure that whoever you do business with in this industry, you like to be around and you like them as human beings, because it's like sort of like getting into a relationship, and it gets hard to get out of later. So that's like one of my biggest
Yeah, you're definitely getting married. Yeah.
Yeah. That's important. I mean, at least in my experience, like almost like this engagement period. Like I've had, situations where I was going to become partners with someone and I was just like, let's make believe we're partners first before we actually sign it. And a couple of months later, if we still love each other, then we could sign the contracts. And if not, whatever. I spent a couple of months, but I saved myself a couple of years. So I think just like getting to know these people deeply, if possible, just to echo what you were saying, it goes a long way, for sure.
Then I want to make an announcement here that I haven't made publicly yet.
Yeah.
On 4/20, we're going to be having one of the biggest events in New York. It's going to be Happy Monkey on the Hudson. We're going to have like some of the biggest DJs, some of the biggest people, and it's going to be like, to add to what you said, it's going to be like a really big member appreciation party, but with like 2,000 people. So everybody's here is invited, and whoever's in New York definitely want to come to that. That's going to be an epic event.
Hell yeah, I'll be there for sure. Anybody in the audience have questions? I know we're kind of running out of time, but if there's any burning questions, we'd love to address anyone that's looking to get into the New York market. If not, no pressure. I know everyone's like 7 joints deep. Cool. Okay, David.
So you touched on you can smoke weed anywhere in New York City, that you can smoke tobacco. Beautiful thing, social justice thing, human justice thing. What's your favorite place out on the street? What a neighborhood, what's a spot like where you would smoke a J and then go do something fun in New York? Big tourist place. Set a little scene for somebody if they're going to visit the city.
Well, for me, one of the places that, you definitely want to smoke and go take a walk in is like, it's kind of cliches, like Central Park is definitely one of them. And then uptown, there's a park called Inwood Park where you'll like to definitely go vibe out after you smoke.
Which I don't even think those places are legal to smoke in. Neither are my favorite places, theoretically. I don't think you're allowed to smoke cigarettes in the.
No, it's not legal to smoke.
Yeah. But I'm a nature guy. Like, I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, but there's just like a part of me that just always wants to connect with nature, and I just love the water. And so you could find me anywhere along the Hudson River, smoking a blunt, getting hungry, and going to one of my favorite restaurants and just munching face. So a little water, a little good food is a happy moment for me. What's up, man?
How you doing? I have a question. So I want to know, since you guys are from New York, I want to know how you feel about the recent stuff with the new governor wanting to make it, or a mayor making the smell of marijuana a legal search vessel and for the probable cause to search again. And how do you think that's going to impact your businesses if they do that?
I think that's horrible. That's Governor Hochul. I think that's horrible. The whole premise of the MRTA, which is the bill that's over there, is to repair the harm that the war on drugs did, and a big part of that was targeting people for cannabis and, search and seizure and stop and frisk. And that's just like activating a different version of it, where like they're going to start selecting people that they think are under the influence, and they're just going to give them permission to stop and frisk people for no reason. So I think that's a horrible thing. We're going to fight against it, and it'll be a travesty if it passes.
We need to move forward, not backwards. Okay, I think that's our time, everybody. Thank you so
Thanks,
much
Ben.
for coming out. Appreciate you all.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day, and thank you to Vlad and Anna for doing this.
Thank you.